happening, everybody? Welcome back to Tavian's World of Reptiles. I hope you are all doing well and taking care of yourself. If this is your first time to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. If you like what you see, check out some of my other content, subscribe, hit the bell, and get notified when I put out future content. And if you are a returning subscriber, thanks so much for swinging through and watching and listening to me ramble again. So, today's video is going to be about something that I definitely feel like as a hobby and as a whole we've kind of shifted away from, but there are people constantly coming into this hobby, and so and unfortunately a lot of those people are coming across kind of older information and kind of running with it, and so I definitely feel like it's important to always kind of bring back up these things even though we think we've kind of gone past it a bit. So today's video is going to be focused on the whole, I don't want to call it a myth because, you know, it is a case-by-case basis, but it's definitely not a fully black and white topic, and it's definitely one I think that needs to be talked about, and that is whether or not feeding our snakes inside of their enclosures creates a cage-aggressive snake. Now, before I get into it, I definitely want to say that the things that I'm saying in this video are my own personal opinion. They are not necessarily a fact. And everybody's going to have a different opinion, and at the end of the day, you're going to do what you're going to do, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and not necessarily, it doesn't mean either one of us are really wrong, and so I just want to say that, so if anybody wants to go and comment and say some ugly stuff, please just go ahead and keep it to yourself. We can talk about it, we can have a conversation about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, but I don't want anybody getting ugly about this because we don't really need to. This is a hobby, we're all trying to learn and grow together, so let's try to keep things positive. Now, that being said, when it comes to feeding our snakes in their enclosure and creating cage aggression, in my personal opinion, I just don't think this is not necessarily a fact when it comes to all snakes in general. It's not necessarily not true. I'm sure there are some snakes that are a bit more picky than others. However, I think there's a lot more to be considered when it comes to this. I personally think there are a lot of pros to feeding our snakes inside of their enclosure as opposed to removing them. For instance, I think that it's significantly more naturalistic for our snakes to actually just be fed inside of their enclosures. There's nobody removing them from the earth and the substrate and everything out in the wild. And I think it just kind of creates that same sense of just natural behavior for them to be fed, where we have everything set up, where all their husbandry care is being perfectly monitored, and to remove them from this perfectly monitored husbandry, area where it's all just perfect for them and put them in this kind of sterile environment is just not necessarily natural, and so I'm not a big fan of doing it. I think it's a lot less stressful on our animals to not remove from the enclosure. Now, I know it's believed that, if you feed your snake in the enclosure, then they start to associate you with food, and I believe that this can happen, but only if the only time that you're interacting with your snake is to actually feed them. Now, a lot of people will say that the snake associates you with food, and I think with this situation, that's not necessarily the case. I think if you are opening your snake's doors only to feed them, then that is what they're associating the doors opening with. It's not necessarily they're associating you with feeding. I think what's happening is that they know that every time that door opens, something comes in that I get to eat. And it doesn't matter what it is for them at this point, because they just know that that sliding door or that sound of that door, the feel of the doors opening means that something's about to come in and I'm about to snatch that. And that's the whole thought process. It's not them associating you with food, it's associating those doors opening with food. And the only reason that happens is, as I said, if you are only interacting with your snake to feed it. And the best way to avoid this is to have regular interactions with your snakes in their enclosure when you are not feeding. Now, with almost all of my snakes that have come in, that have had, made any snake that had a little bit of a cage situation happening, I open their doors for no reason. This is before they associate doors opening with coming out to play. I'm opening their doors for no reason, just to open the door. Sometimes I'll go in there and I'll just top off their water even if they don't really need it. And it's just something that's constantly happening for them. So when the doors are opening, it doesn't mean oh, it's food right off the bat because they just opened it like 10 minutes ago and they didn't bring me food. Oh, they opened it like an hour ago and there was no food. They just kind of messed with my leaves a little bit and then they left. So, I just kind of reach in there and I do random things. Sometimes I'll touch the snake, sometimes I'll just move such things around in the enclosure. Either way, I regularly open the doors of my enclosures so that my snakes know that it doesn't mean it is feeding time every single time those doors open. And that's the best way to avoid that situation. Now, of course, I do understand that these are animals with natural instincts, so there are periods of time where that is not necessarily the case, like right after feeding. I was just looking at my Antiope, my reticulated python, and she has recently eaten, and for like the first 48 hours after eating, she is pretty wild, and she's definitely really food aggressive. She's definitely really reactive to the doors being open and to food being potentially coming in. Like she's definitely ready to snap and bite at anything that open comes through that door when the door is open for the first 48 hours after feeding. She's still in the feeding response. But other than that, she's completely chill and she's relaxed. And but that's just natural. If a snake's just eaten, kind of takes them a few days to kind of get out of that feeding response. But it doesn't mean that she's cage aggressive overall because 95% of the time after that, she's just fine. So, and that's just what I want to talk about in this video is that it is really not a black and white thing. If you are interacting with your snake regularly outside of just feeding, then you're not going to have a cage aggressive snake. And I think just like the whole act of moving our snakes after we have fed them from this sterile environment, it can be very stressful on them. It can cause them to regurgitate their food, and then that's a whole other thing that we have to allow our snakes to recover from, because when a snake regurgitates its food, it requires at least 2 weeks to recover from that before even attempting to feed again. And so I think it's unnecessary to put them in a situation where they're going to get stressed enough to actually just throw up their food. So anyway, I'm not gonna keep rambling about this. That's just kind of what I have to say. Again, as I said, you're gonna have your own opinions about it. You're gonna do things that work better for you. This is what works best for me. I've never had a problem with feeding in my enclosures. So yeah, that's all, you guys. Take care. Love yourselves. Love your loved ones. Love your reptiles. You guys keep spreading those herbs.